Hi, I'm Cindy,
I'm Kim.
and we're doing another deep dive on an interesting score profile. Now, Kim, you got to glance at the numbers a little bit, and I did some different things
Yeah, you
that
did.
we're going to spend some time talking about. So, for those of you who want to do kind of a first run of looking at the numbers yourself, so we'll let you screenshot and screenshot and screenshot and screenshot. And then the final one. Now, notice you've got some, and it's mistakenly here, anything with the little triangle by it was administered by another clinician.
Mm,
Um, and I feel like we should go back and start over again, but I think we're just going to
okay.
move it forward
Okay.
because we're, it's not that big a deal. So if you, anything from the Woodcock Johnson, somebody else did. Okay, so Kim, I did the Stanford Binet. Why do you think I did the Stanford Binet? I can give you a good hint.
Was it having to do with his speed? It's all about processing
Processing
speed, right?
speed,
Yeah,
right?
because the Stanford Binet
Is
doesn't wait, we did this one is a Stanford Binet or not?
so I did a Stanford Binet on him,
Uh-huh.
and a Stanford Binet is a power versus a speed test.
Right. So the Stanford Binet does not hammer on the disability of retrieval speed, processing speed, blah blah blah.
Right, right. The Stanford Binet can take a long time to administer, or it can go very quickly. Okay. Um, I've had kids take more than 5 hours to finish a Stanford Binet, and I've had kids do it fairly quickly. It is a longer test. Most clinicians don't like it for that reason. They do have a prompt to move an individual on, but the test publishers also clearly say if a student is making adequate progress on an item to allow them to continue to work. And
Have you ever
so
seen any school do a Stanford Binet, or is that just not done?
yeah, I've had a couple schools do it, but most schools don't purchase a second IQ test because they're expensive.
Oh,
And
so
it
they just
takes,
do the WIC. That's why they
yeah,
do it.
a lot of
Mhm.
schools just do the WISC or just do a Woodcock Johnson. They normally have in the district some backup IQ test in case that's been administered by somebody else or have had an administration error. But a lot of clinicians are not trained in it, and administering the Stanford Binet is hard.
So if you actually had
So
your student evaluated by the school with a WISC and you didn't feel comfortable with it, could you go to a diagnostician who does know how to do
sure,
Stanford Binet and have that? So that's legal to do two
100%.
different.
Or a
Okay.
KABC or
Okay.
another IQ test.
All right.
Um, and by the way, I like the KABC. I think it's a great test, except once you hit age about 13, 14, you get a lot of ceiling effects where you get a perfect score on a subtest, but your score only goes up so high. So I don't like the KABC for older students that are bright.
Okay.
All right, so on the Stanford Binet, there's a score that jumps out.
Okay. So average IQ, but ooh, quantitative reasoning 91 and knowledge 75. Oh, and
So she's
quantitative.
looking at the percentile ranks, right?
You're right. Sorry.
And
Yeah.
then you'll notice right
Oh,
here we have a lovely fifth
there's,
percentile with a
wow.
2.3 discrepancy, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's big.
And by the way, there should be an asterisk here because um, this individual had significant difficulty with the visual spatial in terms of left right orientation and just completely botched the test. And I didn't feel like it was an accurate representation. And we're going to talk about how I looked at that in more depth later. And so I did some averaging without because this is so different than all the other subtest scores There's a way to go back in and do a recalculation when something weird has really happened.
So do you often see a visual spatial that low, even
No,
for, and
no.
so visual spatial, I know it's not everything, but it usually goes with dysgraphia too, right?
Visual spatial is a right hemisphere thing.
Oh,
Um, you're thinking of visual motor integration.
yeah, sorry.
They're kind of related, but visual spatial is orientation in space, it's understanding dimension and quantity.
Oh, this is the
It's,
right brain thing.
yeah. So on this particular visual spatial task, you show them a map and you ask them to give directions based on a map. And
Oh
then you
boy.
give them some oral directions to figure out if they can orient themselves in space.
Okay, got it.
And if you reverse your left and your right, you tank the test.
But a lot of people with dyslexia have trouble with left and right.
Right. Now, they build in some things, but if you don't attend to the things that they build in, so for example, the compass rose is on the maps.
Right. Okay.
And if you don't orient to that, or you believe that the compass rose is wrong, which is actually what I believe this kid thought,
Oh, wow.
he actually said, "This is reverse. That's not right. It's never eat soggy waffles." And he gave it in the reverse direction.
Oh, Lord.
So
Okay.
he was just confused all over the place. So
Okay.
there were major issues. And I, as I'm talking about it, I'm completely remembering, and that's why I can recall this because it was such an unusual event for him
Wow.
not to know orientation of
So he
north, south,
based his
east, west.
whole test on that area on false
On that
information.
particular misunderstanding,
Hmm.
with never eat soggy waffles, which is north, east, south, west. It's a way that we anchor kids to the compass rose. And he's like, "That's wrong." And it was such an unusual comment. That's why it seared into my brain. Okay. So I didn't believe that that was an accurate assessment of his abilities, right? So he had this underlying confusion. That's like when you talk about kids come in and saying it's an ornament instead of an
Ornament.
ornament,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Where they've misunderstood something and they carry it throughout life. Uh,
Yes.
I think I've told the story of a kid who thought testicles were intestines and intestines were testicles.
Oh, oh no. Never heard
Yeah.
that one.
So kids can have something in their brain where they misheard it and seared it into their brain and then
Hmm.
have held on to that, and then it affects their performance and you have to walk them back through and re-explain and relearn the whole thing.
Okay.
Okay. So that really stood out. So we've got, a high upper end of the average range IQ. It's not technically not high average, but
Mm.
108 is certainly, and I have a typo in here where I've got 107. Don't worry about that. Um, I also ended up giving him a lighter. Now, we've never
Mm.
talked about the lighter.
Mm.
So the lighter is a nonverbal IQ test. And the lighter was the first IQ test they ever developed for individuals who were deaf.
Oh.
And the thing that was unique about it is you pantomime all of the instructions. Like you do yes, you do no, you do, like they actually show you pictures of how to pantomime gestures of expectations, and they
Huh.
tell you how to do things without talking.
Hmm.
And so you administer the entire test via pantomime.
Okay.
And you notice we've got some, again, interesting kind of, hey, we got a 91 and we go down to a 9 on
Hmm.
sequential order.
Hmm.
Same kind of issue of not seeing the logical order of things. Now, it's not exactly the same reversing east and west, but he did not always attend to um, important details in figuring out the sequence of things and would
Hmm.
create his own sequence. Like he would
Hmm.
alternate things for no reason
Huh.
instead of going bigger to smaller. He would go big, small, big, small, big, small for no reason.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Rapid automatic naming looks pretty good.
Okay.
And then we get to
Associational fluency. Oh, phonic awareness.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's some problems. And then associational fluency.
that's the name items in a category. So that's the word
I
retrieval.
see. Yep, that's the
It's not
retrieval.
bad, but it's not super robust. It's like
Okay.
your nose is above the waterline, but your head is not, right?
Okay. Okay.
Um, and then the processing speed
Oh boy.
just tanks out left, right, and center, right?
Yep.
Visual motor integration, clearly an issue. Okay. Now, I went in and did a visual perception test in part because of the kinds of errors that I was seeing on the Jordan left right reversal.
Hmm.
Like that inability to. So at the beginning of the Jordan left right reversal test, you've got rows of pictures, and in each row, the pictures are the same except that one is mirrored or flipped.
Okay. Okay.
And he absolutely struggled on those.
Couldn't see it.
Couldn't see it. And so I went back in and I looked at visual perception to figure out if something was going on with that.
And
Uh,
that's all right brain stuff.
that's right brain stuff. Yeah. And so all of that looked relatively good, but orthographic processing is clearly an issue,
Oh boy. Yeah.
right? Okay. Now, again, the Woodcock Johnson was administered by somebody else. So the following directions was a significant issue, but the opus, I don't know if we've talked about the opus. We need to do a whole
No.
video on the opus. The oral passage understanding scale, I love. I
Hmm.
love. And the reason I love it is it more closely mimics what can happen in a classroom. And that's where somebody stands up in the front of the room and they read a blurb from um, a piece of literature, or they stand up there and lecture. And what the opus asks kids to do is make inferences from what they've heard,
Ah,
to figure out how to define a word that they've never heard before when it's used in context,
yep.
to remember specific details. It does a really nice breakout of individual questions and what those questions are asking. Um, and I love the test.
Is this the same
Um,
as auditory comprehension?
it's listening comprehension.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and the protocol, in the end of the protocol, actually has um, a table where you fill in, or since you purchase the test, the company that publishes the test has an automatic scoring feature, and it will pull up um, and do an analysis of what items a student missed in what domain. And what I'm
Oh,
buying time for here is I'm screenshotting an example of the kinds of areas that it does a breakout for. And I'm going to share that here in just a second, now that I have wasted everybody's time as I mumble through this. Bear with me. Um, and so it does a very nice breakout of, are we looking at lexical semantic? Is it, do you understand what a word is? Do you understand syntactic structure? Can you make inferences from background knowledge? Can you make inferences from context? Can you make an inference from figurative language? Inference from prediction, memory for non-meaningful information, recall of text details, and then passage synthesis. Did you get the overall meaning of it?
yeah.
Can you give me a title for this? Right.
Yeah. It's very
So
detailed.
I love it. It does a great job of analysis, and I will go in and do a deeper dive where I will do accuracy within a particular category. So, for example, if there's three questions on um, inferencing based on background knowledge, and the kid gets one of three correct, I will say they only were able to answer 33% of those questions correctly, because it's meaningful for you to go, wait, they're not pulling in background knowledge
Hmm.
as they answer questions of what they've read. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, but they're not pulling it in or they don't have the background knowledge. Or
It
are
can
you,
be both.
yeah.
However, we've done a way deep dive on that and we're going to do a separate video on it. So, what's interesting is they struggle with the understanding directions on the Woodcock Johnson, which requires recalling a specific sentence prompt and then following what it says. If you see a soccer ball uh, in the goal net, touch the third bird from the right. If the soccer ball's not in the goal net, tap each of the children sitting on the ground.
Hmm.
And I'm just randomly making that up. And that would be a very high level one.
Right.
So there's a difference between this individual's ability to follow a one sentence or two sentence prompt and being able to pull based on context and having
Okay.
more context, even with a picture prompt on the uh, understanding directions on the Woodcock Johnson. Even having the picture there couldn't help him recall it, but having more contextual information improved his understanding.
Hmm.
Okay, now let's take a look at reading. What do you notice?
Wow. Lots of difficulty with his reading
How so?
and also,
It's the fluency piece, right?
well, his,
And decoding.
yeah, I mean, the fluency's, yeah, there's fluency, comprehension, the rate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the worst is, yeah, I mean, it's an average of all of them, but the accuracy,
Right. So
9%.
he read aloud at an okay rate for 108 IQ or 107 IQ,
Okay.
whatever I put in there. Um, the accuracy is that ongoing issue, and then the accuracy affected his comprehension and affects his
Yes.
fluency, right?
Yeah.
So these are kids
Right.
that like read, they make lots of mistakes. The mistakes affects their understanding of the passage, but they continue to read at a particular rate.
So parents get confused when they see, but my kid can read, but they don't know what they're reading and
Right,
what it means.
right. And we talk about this as an inverted triangle. You have decoding, which leads to fluency, which leads to comprehension. And his fluency is an issue.
Hmm.
Okay. And just because you can read at a reasonable rate doesn't mean that you're reading accurately enough to decode what you've actually read or to understand what you've
So
actually read.
can you differentiate fluency versus rate? Are you talking about the syntactic, the phrasing and the
So,
meaningful?
fluency on the GORT, the Great Oral Reading Test, is an average of rate and accuracy.
Oh,
So, your fluency can be more affected by your accuracy than your rate, which is what I would argue here. You've got a
okay.
two-thirds standard deviation between the rate and the accuracy. And so
Mm,
that fluency being a 7 is influenced by the accuracy more than the rate.
I
He
see.
is not a
Okay.
super fast reader.
Okay.
And by the way, I have some dyslexic kids, like they start reading and they just hit the gas pedal and they don't care what they read on the page and they just go as fast as they can. So in the directions, they say as fast and as accurately, and they hear fast and they're like, boom, hit the gas pedal.
Hmm.
He did not necessarily do that, but again, you can see that. All right, we get down here into the letter word recognition and the reading comprehension. Notice that the reading comprehension pops
Yep.
because those accuracy issues affected his reading of the questions about the prompts
Mm,
as well as the prompts themselves. So
I
if you
see.
misread the question,
Hmm.
you're not answering the right question. The
Hmm.
questions on this are not read to you,
Hmm.
which I actually really like.
Hmm.
Okay. The nonsense word decoding looks okay. Um, but the real word decoding is clearly an issue, right?
Yeah.
And then paralleled with the other clinician that did part of an assessment on him. Now, On this is a great contrast. This illustrates in depth why I'm not a huge fan of the Woodcock Johnson reading comprehension relative to the KTA reading comprehension. Okay. So on the
Yeah.
KTA, you've got a passage, you read the passage to yourself, and then you've got multiple questions down below. And you're expected to read the question yourself, and
Hmm.
you prompt the student to say the number of the question when you answer it. So you'd read it, you'd say, one, um, I wear bows on my hair on Saturdays. Two, elephants eat bananas and peanuts. Three, anyway, you just answer the questions, right? On the Woodcock Johnson, on the passage comprehension, you have a short, like 1 to 3 or 4 sentences, and I think four is even extreme, where you read a couple of sentences, there's a word missing, and you have to predict the word from context.
Oh,
And they
that's a
consider
really
that passage comprehension.
that's a really different way of determining comprehension.
Completely different way. And so if you make errors but have enough contextual information, you can guess at what you need in the passage.
Hmm.
It's called a close procedure. The difference, well, this is not truly a close because there's also reading comprehension tests where they do a similar thing where they, every seventh or 13th word or whatever, they take out a key word and they give you 3 words down below and you're supposed to guess which of the 3 words goes in there. And it
Hmm.
keeps getting resurrected over and over and over again, and it doesn't measure what people think it measures, but it's easy to administer, and so people want to make it work. And
Yeah,
I'm
because
not a
it's
huge fan of it.
so it's way overvalued. It's too high, in your opinion.
It doesn't illustrate the challenges this kid runs into in reading. And
Okay.
I feel like the KTA does a better job of illustrating how the reading accuracy affects his ability to accurately read and understand what's been put in front of him
Okay.
and why he ran into problems academically that didn't make sense to people
Right.
because they didn't understand why.
I
All right,
see.
then we move into writing.
Okay.
And yet again, we have another example of where I don't like the Woodcock Johnson writing samples because it is so vague. It's looking at more style
Mm-hmm.
and general content than are you producing a syntactically complex, correctly punctuated response the way that the KTA does. And it doesn't look at passage level writing. It only ever elicits a sentence level response.
Hmm.
And so, also, a lot of clinicians don't open up the manual to score it. And the manual gives very clear examples of what a one, a two, a one, or a zero response is. And in some cases, they have a 1.5 and a 0.5. Um, and it takes time to score. It's faster to score than the KTA, but it doesn't necessarily get at what happens under time constraints when I ask you to write a passage,
Wow.
write a
So
coherent paragraph.
is that why these people came to you? Because they got this testing, it said there's no problem, but there was still a problem.
Yeah, which is common. Okay. And
Mhm.
then math overall looks pretty parallel. Um, I was surprised that the math fluency was as high as it was, given the processing speed that we saw back up here.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the processing speed on the Woodcock Johnson cognitive, and the clinician that did the evaluation on the student did not administer that. And so he did pull out an adequate score on addition, subtraction, and multiplication fluency, but did not do well with the writing fluency and then the sentence reading fluency.
Mm.
And so they struggled with that a little bit. So, how would you diagnose a student?
Yeah. It is very confusing. I mean, so the very initial thing that we saw in the very first page, that was still kind of
So,
confusing.
dyslexia with
Yeah, dyslexia for sure, but
phonological processing and
right.
orthographic processing issues.
And
Okay.
yeah,
And then dysgraphia with the
yeah,
visual motor integration.
right.
Okay. But then you've got that overall processing speed, and then you've got some of the gaps and holes in oral language. And this
Hmm.
is a kid that I would typically say we need to do more dig on oral language. And this was a unique situation because normally I would take plenty of time to um, dig into oral language, but this is a kid that was not going to tolerate that. So I
Oh.
didn't do a deeper dive into oral language to pull apart why is understanding directions hard, but the opus is more robust. So
Hmm.
there is something to be teased out in that and pulled apart. Um, and math is in reasonable shape, but this is definitely a kid that needs academic supports.
So with the oral language, you're saying it's both his listening skills and his speaking, it's more the listening skills.
The Well, this is what you've got to pull apart. So this is where you would pull in the clinical evaluation of language fundamentals, otherwise known as the SELF, which is spelled CELF, not SELF,
Hmm.
or the CASL, which is the CASL, the Comprehensive Assessment of Spoken Language, and they're actually on the second edition, or a TOLD, which is the test of oral language development, to really kind of pull out where is the breakdown at the word, the sentence level, like what is causing understanding directions to tank while a passage level is adequate. Are we not understanding individual words, but there's enough context that we can work around that? Or do we not understand a subordinating conjunction versus a coordinating conjunction versus a prepositional phrase and how that changes the sequence? What happens with different syntactic structures? Um, so there's stuff to pull apart there, but he needed a break from testing, and whoever he worked with needed to do that additional pull apart to look at that oral language piece in more depth
Okay.
and really figure out um, what was happening there. This is a kid that I would have pulled out Reasoning and Reading by Joanne Carlisle, who, by the way, was one of my professors at Northwestern,
Hmm.
which talks about reading at the word, sentence, and passage level, and then helps break apart the logic um, in understanding. And I'm going to pull up Reasoning and Reading level B, which is the highest one that she wrote. And you can see here that you've got, let me blow it up a little bit so that our viewers can actually see this in a little more depth. Um, you've got part whole relationships, classifications. Like the only thing I would say that Dr. Carlisle needed to do was triple this. And
Hmm.
you and I could both generate more and more and more activities out of this because all of this stuff is so good, right? But you've got word meaning, sentence meaning, paragraph meaning, and then reasoning skills. So it's building in how do we understand what a sentence is, words are saying, what sentences are saying, what passages are saying, and how we reach conclusions based on it. And this is an instance where we will use written text to support oral skill set. And I'm going to scroll through and give you an example of a task that you and I frequently use that I love, which is it a sentence or not? Um,
Yeah,
and then getting to the point, what's critical in the sentence?
the most important part.
What's the most important part? How do I identify what is an important part? And this is something I wish there were 900 of, which
Mm,
is the following instructions
mm.
at the end of can you so at the end of every chapter she has an activity where let me see if I can get to there. There's the juggled sentences, which I also love. Same or different meanings, I love. I mean, there's just so much good stuff in here. Okay, so this is a following directions activity where um, she gives you a series of steps
Ah,
and you have to follow the instructions to see if you can,
interesting.
um,
Wow,
which
that's a good
tells
one.
you where the challenges are with kids.
Yeah.
So that's that draws a parallel and lets us work both on oral language and reading comprehension simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly needs decoding instruction.
Mm-hmm.
So is reading by gut instinct versus knowing the rules of syllable division, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Written language, all the issues that we're seeing with oral language, with understanding syntactic structure, are going to result in really simple sentence structures in writing
Mm-hmm.
and kind of repetitive syntactic structures. Uh, you can hear this when a kid reads, where they kind of use the same intro over and over again, or the same ending over and over again, and that they parallel sentence after sentence after sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And then in math, it's about teaching them to double check their work and catch mistakes. But this is a kind of kid that I would send to you and to an SLP, a speech language
Mm-hmm.
pathologist, and have you work on the decoding and have the speech language pathologist work on the oral language and executive function, and you work on written language as well, but kind of
Yeah.
dovetail between the two.
Okay.
Uh, if you like this, let us know. We always appreciate hearing from you. Questions, let us know. And we look forward to seeing you soon.